At Riverdale High, prejudice didn't come in words, but in laughter. Clara, a popular and spoiled girl, thought it was funny to make fun of other people's appearances, until she chose the wrong target, a classmate with a strong soul and a serene smile. What started as a joke ended up becoming the most memorable day of his life. But before knowing this story of justice and redemption, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Because here, karma shows that appearance is deceiving, but character never lies. Riverdale High School seemed like one of those perfect places only found in American movies. The wide hallways, colorful lockers, and the constant scent of expensive perfume created a false sense of harmony. But, as with almost any place that's too beautiful, there were invisible cracks, and within them lay stories no one wanted to see. Among the students, Clara Thompson was the name most often heard. Daughter of a local businessman and accustomed to getting whatever she wanted, Clara was the quintessential popular girl. She had a charming smile when she wanted it, but also a sharp look that could cut through. With a group of friends always around her, she reigned supreme at school, as if she believed the world existed to serve as an audience. On that spring Monday, a new student arrived at Riverdale. Her name was Aisha Brown, originally from Atlanta. She had moved to New York with her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts to make ends meet. Aisha walked into the classroom. With her head held high, her curly hair neatly styled in long braids that gleamed in the light. She wore her simple school uniform, but there was something different about her, a mix of shyness and strength. The teacher presented, "Class, this is Aisha. I hope everyone welcomes her." She smiled, and the smile was genuine, the kind of smile that didn't need approval. But at the back of the room, Clara and her friends were already exchanging mischievous glances. One of them whispered, "Look at her hair. It looks like a sponge." Clara laughed softly, covering her mouth. That was enough for the new student to understand that she wasn't welcome. For the next few days, Aisha remained silent. She sat alone, taking careful notes, and seemed unfazed by the whispers. But like a virus, the laughter began to spread. In the hallway, Clara discreetly imitated the girls' braided movements. In the cafeteria, she commented loudly, "Can someone tell the new girl that there's a flat iron?" Hurry. Friends laughed while Aisha pretended not to hear. That afternoon, however, something changed. During science class, the teacher proposed a pair project. The pairs were drawn in front of the class, and unfortunately for Clara, or perhaps fate, her name was drawn alongside Aisha's. "Seriously?" Clara muttered, rolling her eyes. The teacher noticed and replied firmly, "Yes, Miss Thompson. I'm sure it will be a good opportunity to learn something new." Deep down, the entire room knew that something new wasn't exactly what Clara was willing to learn. At recess, she approached her friends, indignant. "Can you believe it? I'm going to have to work with her." One of them, laughing, replied, "Take the opportunity to ask her what cream she uses on her hair. Maybe you'll get lucky." Clara laughed loudly, and the entire group joined in. The sound echoed through the hallway, and Aisha, passing nearby, heard it all. For a moment she paused. Her eyes met Clara's. There was sadness in them, but also something else, a quiet dignity that made Clara look away. But of course pride spoke louder. "Don't look at me like that," Clara said in a low voice. "It was just a joke." Aisha didn't answer. She just walked to the locker, opened it, and calmly put the books away. That calmness disconcerted Clara more than any reaction. That night, Clara told the story with a laugh to her parents, who barely paid attention. Her father simply said, "You need to learn to choose your friends." "Better, daughter." But the words went in one ear and out the other. She slept peacefully, unaware that life was already writing the first chapter of the lesson she would learn, a lesson that would not be taught by teachers, but by fate itself. The next morning dawned cold, but the sun insisted on shining through the school windows. Clara arrived surrounded by her friends, displaying the same air of superiority as always. Laughter echoed through the hallways, mingled with the sound of lockers slamming shut and the hubbub of hurried students. For her, everything was in its right place, until she saw Aisha in the hallway carrying a stack of books. The new student walked calmly, her hair tied in long braids that swayed with each step. To Clara, that hair was a provocation. She couldn't explain why, but something about that quiet confidence bothered her. Perhaps it was because Aisha, without even trying, attracted attention. Even without shouting, she commanded respect. During art class, the teacher asked the students to pair up to create a poster about diversity. Clara rolled her eyes and grumbled, "I'm sorry. Diversity? Really?" Aisha, sitting next to her, pretended not to hear. She grabbed her materials, opened her notebook, and began to draw. "I can make the sketch," she said politely. Clara crossed her arms. "Sure, do whatever you want. I'll review it later to make it presentable." Clara's friends, sitting at nearby tables, watched the scene with suppressed giggles. One of them whispered, "Look at her hair moving. It looks like a broom." Clara bit her lip to keep from laughing, but the temptation was too great. So she took out her phone and discreetly snapped a photo. The click was almost imperceptible, but Aisha heard it. She looked up and stared at Clara. "Did you take a picture of me?" Clara feigned surprise. "Of course not. Why would I do that?" But the smile on her face gave her away. During recess, the image appeared in the class's groups. Someone, no one knew who, had posted the photo of Aisha from behind, accompanied by the caption, "New school broom. Anyone want to sweep the floor with it?" Laughter echoed through the halls. Aisha, who was in the cafeteria, heard the notifications ringing. When she opened her phone, her heart sank. For a moment she stood still. Her hands trembled, but her face remained serene. She stood and left the cafeteria silently. The laughter followed her like cruel echoes. Clara watched from afar. Outwardly, she laughed along. Inside, something throbbed, an uncomfortable feeling, a weight she tried to ignore. Her friends cheered at the joke's success, but Clara couldn't enjoy herself anymore. At the end of the afternoon, the art teacher sent a message to the class group. "Management wants to speak to everyone tomorrow about respect and cyberbullying. I hope you're ready to listen." Clara felt her stomach churn. At home, she tried to pretend nothing was happening, but her conscience wouldn't let her rest. She spent the night tossing and turning, remembering Aisha's calm gaze, a gaze that, for some reason, conveyed not anger, but only disappointment. The next morning, as he entered school, he noticed something had changed. The conversation stopped as soon as he passed. The looks were different, not of admiration, but of judgment. And then he saw Aisha in the courtyard, surrounded by a few teachers. The girl spoke calmly, explaining what had happened. The principal watched, silently, his face serious. Clara wanted to disappear. Hours later, she was called to the principal's office. She walked through the halls, her heart pounding in her throat. The principal, sitting behind his desk, didn't need to say much. "You know what's most disappointing, Clara?" he began. "You have talent, you have charisma, you have everything to inspire others. But you chose to hurt." She tried to justify herself. "It was just a joke, sir." "Jokes don't hurt, Clara. What you did was cruel, and now you'll have to deal with the consequences." The room seemed to shrink. The director sighed and continued. "Aisha doesn't want punishment. She just asked that you listen to what she has to say." Clara looked up in surprise. The door opened, and Aisha walked in. Her hair was tied back, her gaze firm, and her calmness intimidating. She stopped in front of her and said in a calm voice, "I don't want you to be punished. I want you to understand that what you did wasn't funny. Because tomorrow it could be someone else, and maybe that person won't have the strength to handle it." The silence stretched on. Clara's heart raced and tears began to well up. Shame, for the first time, overcame pride. And it was at that moment that karma began to act, not as punishment, but as a mirror. That night, the silence in Clara's room seemed louder than any noise from school. She stared at the ceiling, her eyes watery, her chest tight. The laughter that once came easily now sounded high, distant, almost absurd. He grabbed his phone and opened social media. Aisha's photo had already been deleted, but the damage was done. There were comments from classmates who had once idolized her. "This is way out of line. I expected more from you. I can't believe you did that." With each sentence, Clara's face burned. For the first time, she understood that popularity was not synonymous with respect. Suddenly, the decorated room, the expensive clothes, and the perfect photos seemed ridiculous. None of it brought comfort. She felt empty and alone. The next morning, she hesitated before leaving the house. The mirror stared at her as if judging her. The reflection showed a girl she didn't recognize, her eyes swollen, her expression drawn, and a guilt that stained even her impeccable uniform. When she arrived at school, she realized how much things had changed. The friends who had once accompanied her now kept their distance. The hallways, once filled with laughter and greetings, seemed too long. Some students whispered as she passed, others simply turned away. The social punishment had begun. During class, Clara could barely pay attention. The teacher's words seemed to echo without meaning. When she looked to the side, she saw Aisha sitting calmly, focused, as if the chaos didn't affect her. That serenity was both uncomfortable and embarrassing. During recess, Clara went to the playground and sat alone, something she'd never done before. She grabbed her snack, but couldn't eat it. Memories came back in flashes, the laughter, the photo, the girl's gaze. Each memory was a thorn. Suddenly a shadow approached. Aisha. Clara looked up in surprise. The girl was holding 2 glasses of juice. "I brought you one," he said simply. Clara was speechless. "Why?" he murmured. "Because you seem to need it more than I do." The answer was so simple it hurt. Clara felt the lump in her throat tighten. "I don't deserve this." Aisha gave a half smile. "Maybe not, but that's how we break the cycle." She walked away, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts. The juice in his hands felt like it weighed tons. That day, upon returning home, Clara cried for the first time truly. Not out of anger, nor out of public embarrassment, but out of sincere regret. The kind of pain that comes not from without, but from within. In the following days, he tried to get closer to Aisha, but he didn't know how. He greeted her from afar, discreetly helped with chores, and avoided jokes. It was a silent, almost invisible, but genuine effort. Little by little, he began to understand what the director meant about learning from consequences. One day during history class, the teacher asked the students to write an essay about a mistake that changed their lives. Clara stared at the blank paper. After a few minutes, he began to write. "The worst mistake I ever made was thinking that other people's pain was something to laugh at. I laughed, but I didn't realize I was laughing at my own ignorance. I discovered that hurting someone says more about us than it does about the person we hurt." When he finished, his hands were shaking. He handed in the work in silence. In the afternoon, the teacher called her after class. "I read your text," he said, "and for the first time, I saw something true coming from you." She lowered her head. "It's still not enough, but it's a start," he replied. Clara left the room, feeling something new, a kind of relief that comes when we stop lying to ourselves. The guilt, previously a suffocating weight, began to transform into learning. Karma had not finished its work. It had only taken the first step. That Saturday morning felt different. Clara woke with the feeling that something inside her was changing, not suddenly, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, like the light that gradually fills a room before the sun rises completely. The weight of guilt was still there, but now accompanied by a new feeling, a desire to make amends for what she had done. She sat on the edge of the bed, studying her hands, the painted nails, the expensive bracelets, the cell phone at her side. Everything that had once represented status now seemed empty. What truly mattered, she realized, was something money could never buy: the respect of the one she had hurt. She spent the weekend thinking about Aisha, about her calm gaze, the gesture of the juice, the simple words that had pierced her soul. "This is how we break the cycle." These words echoed like a mantra, repeating in her mind until Clara felt she could no longer ignore them. On Monday, when she arrived at school, she decided to act differently. She walked into the classroom and, for the first time in a long time, greeted everyone. Her good morning was shy but sincere. Some responded, others pretended not to hear. That was okay. She knew that regaining respect would take time. During break, she went to the library, where Aisha usually sat. She found her reading. Alone, as usual. Clara took a deep breath before speaking. "Can I sit?" Aisha looked up in surprise. "Of course." He sat beside her, silent for a few seconds. The words were hard to come out. I still don't know how to apologize properly. No words seem enough." Aisha closed the book slowly. "No need to apologize again. What matters is what you do next. What if what I do is never enough?" Aisha thought for a moment and replied, "So keep trying. Sometimes, change isn't about getting everything right all at once. It's about not repeating the same mistake." Clara felt her eyes well up. That conversation, short and simple, carried more weight than any sermon. In the following days, she began helping with school projects. She cleaned tables, organized materials, and picked up trash from the playground. Tasks she'd previously thought too small for someone like her. And little by little, something inside her was being rebuilt. People still whispered, but now the conversations had a different tone. Some were surprised by the change, others watched in silence. Clara no longer cared. The opinions of others were no longer her compass. What guided her now was a sincere desire to do the right thing. One day, the art teacher, the same one who had witnessed Aisha's humiliation, asked for volunteers to paint a mural at the school entrance, representing diversity and unity. Clara raised her hand. "I want to participate," he said. The room fell silent. "Me too," Aisha added from the other side. Their eyes met, and a small smile formed between them. They spent the week side by side, brushing colors onto the white wall. The work seemed a living symbol of what they were building, not just art, but reconciliation. During a break, Clara watched Aisha paint and said, "Your hair is beautiful, you know that?" Aisha looked at her surprised and then smiled. "Thank you, he tells my story." Clara nodded. "I think I'm learning to listen to stories that I used to just judge." When the mural was finished, the entire school stopped to admire it. In the center was a phrase chosen by the two. "The beauty of a place lies in the difference in the colors that form it." The principal took photos. The students praised her, and for a moment Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. True pride. That night, gazing at the mural illuminated by the streetlights, she realized that the colorful drawing wasn't just on the wall, it was inside her. Every line, every color, every silent forgiveness was part of her new identity. And for the first time since it all began, she slept peacefully. Time passed, and autumn began to tint the trees golden. Riverdale High felt like a different school. Maybe it was just the changing seasons, or maybe it was a reflection of the people who had changed with it. Clara no longer surrounded herself with smiling friends or displayed the artificial confidence she once had. Now she walked alone, but lightly. Solitude, once a punishment, had become a haven. Teachers noticed the difference. The girl who used to talk during class was now the first to raise her hand to answer. Her grades improved, but what really caught their attention was the way she treated others. She greeted staff, thanked the janitor, and helped classmates she'd previously ignored. The prejudice that once came from her mouth was now countered by her own actions. During a student meeting, the principal proposed creating a group-on social. Awareness when asked who wanted to participate, Clara raised her hand. The simple gesture was enough to make everyone in the room look at her. Some were still skeptical, others were surprised, but no one laughed anymore. Aisha, sitting in the last row, just smiled. The meetings began every Thursday after school. There, students gathered to talk about empathy, bullying, and racism. Clara listened more than she spoke. When she did decide to share something, she did so honestly. "I used to think that joking around with someone different was just a joke. Today I realize I was laughing at the pain of people who just wanted to be respected." The room fell silent, touched by the honesty of someone who had made a mistake and learned. Aisha, listening, felt pride, not for having been a victim, but for having helped spark change in someone else. Over time, the two girls' story spread throughout the school. not as a scandal, but as an example. Students who had previously mocked others began to, rethink their own attitudes. The jokes disappeared from the hallways, replaced by more cautious glances. Riverdale High was different, and that, in a way, had started with Clara's mistake. At home, her father also noticed the change. A rigid man, accustomed to measuring success by grades and appearances, began to see his daughter differently. "You look like a different person," he said one night as they ate dinner. "Maybe I'm learning what really matters." He nodded proudly. "Mistakes are inevitable, Clara. What defines us is what we do after them." Those words struck her. The following month, the school announced an essay contest on resilience and empathy. Clara was hesitant to participate, but Aisha insisted, "You should write. Your story can help other people." And she wrote. She didn't name names, but she told everything. The mistake, the regret, the process of change. She described how prejudice is born of ignorance and how forgiveness can be more powerful than shame. When he finished, he felt light. He handed over the text without expectations, only with gratitude for having had the courage to share it. A few weeks later, the principal walked into the room with an envelope in his hand. "We have the results of the contest," he announced. Clara kept her gaze down. "And the winning text belongs to Clara Thompson." The room erupted in applause. Clara took a few seconds to react. She stood up slowly, her hands trembling, and walked to the center of the room. The principal smiled and handed her the certificate. "You didn't win by writing well, Clara. You won by writing from the heart." The tears fell silently. Aisha was the first to stand and applaud, and soon the whole class joined in. That victory wasn't about awards or recognition. It was about redemption, about a girl who made fun of a hare and ended up learning what humanity is. That night, Clara returned home with a small smile. Through the bus window, she stared at her reflection in the glass, and for the first time in a long time, she liked what she saw. She was no longer the girl who laughed at other people's pain. She was the girl who learned that respect is the most beautiful form of love. The following weeks passed with a strange tranquility, as if the universe had given her a respite. Clara no longer felt the judgmental gaze of her classmates. Now she saw discreet smiles and even nods of approval. Life finally seemed to fall into place. But fate, ever patient and wise, still had something in store. One Thursday afternoon, the principal entered the room with a statement. "Everyone, the school is participating in the Empathy and Diversity State Fair in Manhattan. We need a group to represent Riverdale High. Who's willing to volunteer?" Several hands went up, including Clara's. "Very well," the principal continued. "Each school will tell a real story of overcoming difficulties experienced by its students. I want your group to think of something true." Clara's heart raced. It was as if those words were directed at her. During the break, Aisha approached. "I think we have a story to tell." Clara hesitated. "Do you think we should?" "Yes. If we want other people to learn, we need to be brave enough to tell the truth." In the following days, they began writing together. The title they chose was simple: The Value of a Word. The text described the power of words to build or destroy, and how a thoughtless act can change lives. Clara wrote each line with an open heart, revisiting painful memories. The laughter, the shame, Aisha's gaze, it all came back, but now without hatred, only with understanding. When the day of the fair arrived, the Manhattan auditorium was packed. Schools from all over the city presented their moving stories, but when it was Riverdale High's turn, silence fell. Clara took the stage next to Aisha. The bright lights blinded her, the microphone trembling in her hands. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice trembling. "My name is Clara Thompson, and I'm here to tell you about a mistake." The audience leaned in, attentive. She continued, "A while ago, I thought making fun of someone was harmless. I thought it was funny. And before I knew it, I had already hurt an incredible person. Someone who only wanted respect. That person is here today by my side and has taught me something no book can teach. That forgiveness isn't weakness. It's strength." Aisha then took the microphone, her voice soft but firm. When someone laughs at you for who you are, the world tries to make you believe there's something wrong with you. But there isn't. The fault lies with those who don't see it. And sometimes the best way to change someone is not to retaliate with hatred, but with patience. The audience gave a standing ovation. Teachers wept. Students filmed the moment. Riverdale's director, overcome with emotion, wiped away tears. After the performance, the two were surrounded by people wanting to hug them. Students from other schools shared their own stories of prejudice. "You gave me the courage to forgive," said a girl. "And to change," added another. Clara and Aisha looked at each other. In that instant, they understood that they had transformed pain into purpose. Back on the bus, on the way home, the sunset was tinting the sky orange. Aisha was leaning against the window, and Clara, beside her, held the certificate of participation they had received. "Funny," Clara said, chuckling softly. "One day, I made you cry. And now, you're the reason I smile." Aisha looked at her and replied, "That's life. Sometimes fate just wants to teach us what's right, the hard way." The two laughed together. The past, which had once been a wound, was now a bond. Clara leaned her head against the glass, watching the city lights rush by. She felt light, as if something had finally healed. And on that silent journey back home, he realized that the real reunion was not with Aisha. It was with the good part of herself, the one that pride once silenced, but that regret made reborn. Success at the state fair brought a new glow to Riverdale High. Clara and Aisha's story ran through the halls like a living legend, a reminder that respect could transform an environment more than any rule. The two became an unlikely and admired duo. However, like every journey of true change, fate still had one final test in store. A few weeks later, a group of new students arrived at school. Among them was With You, a girl. With dyed blue hair, alternative clothing, and a reserved demeanor. She was different, and in the Riverdale of old, that was enough to make her a target. Clara noticed her on her first day, sitting alone in the cafeteria, absent-mindedly picking at her food while listening to whispers around her. At the next table, a group of girls started laughing loudly. "Look at her hair, it looks like a peacock." Laughter echoed through the room. Clara froze. The words were a cruel mirror of the past. For a moment, she felt like she was back in that day. The click of her phone, her friend's laughter, Aisha's wounded gaze. This time, however, she didn't hesitate. She stood up, crossed the cafeteria, and stopped in front of the girls. "Do you think this is funny?" The group fell silent, surprised. One of them responded with disdain. "It was just a joke." Clara took a deep breath. "That's exactly what I said once. And I really hurt someone." Silence fell over the place. Everyone watched. Clara then picked up her tray and sat next to Lena. "Can I eat here?" Lena nodded, confused. "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do," Clara replied, "because one day no one did it for me." The girls who were mocking her lowered their heads. The entire cafeteria got the message without her needing to say anything else. Later, Aisha found out what had happened and looked for Clara. "I heard what you did today," he said, smiling. Clara shrugged shyly. "It was instinctive. I just couldn't let it happen again." "That's the real test," Aisha replied. "It's not changing out of regret. It's changing to protect others from what you once were." That night was different. Clara arrived home, looked in the mirror, and for the first time saw something she'd never seen before. Pride. Not the empty pride of someone who wants to be admired, but the pride of someone who knows they're on the right path. Days later, the principal announced over the school loudspeaker, "Congratulations to the Riverdale High Empathy Group. Thanks to your initiatives, the school will be recognized with the city's Respectful Coexistence Award." The students applauded. Clara and Aisha exchanged a knowing look. It wasn't about trophies, and they both knew it. It was about changing a culture, about transforming pain into awareness. But Clara's real ordeal came when, at the end of the ceremony, one of the girls who had mocked Lena approached her. Clara, can I talk to you? She nodded. I wanted to apologize. You were right. I just laughed because everyone else was laughing. Clara took a deep breath and replied with a slight smile. So now do it differently. Laugh at kindness, not cruelty. The girl nodded, excited. As she walked the halls after class, Clara noticed something subtle. The very place where she had once spread poison now bloomed with respect. Karma had completed its cycle. That night, he wrote in his diary, I thought forgiveness was the end of the road, but I discovered it's only the beginning. The real test comes when the world puts you on the other side of the story. And fate, like a fair mirror, now showed her the most beautiful version of herself. The one who learned from her mistakes, protected those in need, and became exactly the person she needed to have by her side one day. Riverdale High was never the same. The colorful mural painted by Clara and Aisha now adorned the school's main lobby. Beneath the phrase, the beauty of a place lies in the difference in the colors that form it. Students passed by every day, many without knowing the full story behind those paints, but feeling the message in the air. The empathy group, created months earlier, had grown. Clara now coordinated it with Aisha. They organized lectures, campaigns, and even discussion groups with parents and teachers. The girl who once mocked another girl's hair was now teaching respect. One day, the principal called both of them to her office. I have news, he said with a tight smile. The state school board is going to award a group of students who have promoted inclusion initiatives. Riverdale High has been nominated, and the committee has chosen you to represent the school at the ceremony. The two looked at each other, surprised. But, Principal, said Clara, there are so many students who were part of this. Yes, she replied, but someone has to tell the story, and no one better than someone who has lived both sides of it. The news spread. The entire school was thrilled. Teachers and students created posters, the mural was restored, and the two girls' story of resilience became a symbol of pride for everyone. On the day of the ceremony, the state board auditorium was packed. Schools across the state were presenting projects on solidarity and diversity, but Riverdale's presentation was different. It wasn't a technical speech. It was a public confession turned into a learning experience. When Clara took the stage, her heart was pounding. Like a drum. The lights, the flashes, the voices, everything seemed distant. She took the microphone and looked out at the audience. Once upon a time, I was the kind of person who believed the world revolved around me, that I could play with other people's pain without consequences. But I was wrong. I learned, the hard way, that words hurt, and that apologizing doesn't erase what was said. What does erase it is what you do afterward. She looked at Aisha, who was watching her from the audience. With teary eyes. I'm here today because someone forgave me. Because a girl I hurt chose to teach me instead of hating me. And that's the true power of empathy, transforming shame into strength. The audience was silent for a moment before bursting into applause. Teachers, students, parents, all stood. The stage lights reflected the tears in Clara's eyes. After the ceremony, the principal approached. Do you understand now why I insisted you tell your story? Clara smiled. Yes, it's not about me. It's about what I've become because of her. Back at school, a surprise awaited them. In the courtyard, a new plaque was installed beneath the mural. In silver letters, it read, "In memory of the courage of two students who proved that respect transforms the world." The students gathered, took pictures, and many cried. Clara watched with a heavy heart. Aisha approached and said, "Do you know what's most beautiful about all this?" "What?" "We didn't need to be perfect to change things. We just needed to be honest." Clara smiled, moved. "And to think it all started with a bad joke. And it ended with the most important lesson we could teach," Aisha added. As the sun set, illuminating the mural with orange hues, Clara realized something. This place, which had once been the scene of her shame, was now the symbol of her redemption. And in that instant, he understood what karma really means. Not punishment, but consequence. The pain it once caused had returned, yes, but transformed into learning, purpose, and hope. Winter arrived, bringing a chill that made New York seem even grayer. But inside Riverdale High, the warmth was different. There was something in the air, an atmosphere of unity, care, and empathy. Clara and Aisha's project had become a permanent fixture at the school, and both were now seen as positive leaders, role models for change. But as fate often has it, the true test of character never comes when we're at our lowest, but when we're finally at peace. One morning, Clara received an anonymous message on her cell phone. People only believe you because they don't know what you did. Fake. She froze. The past, which seemed buried, returned in a cold, cruel sentence. She showed the message to Aisha, who read it calmly. Someone's still stuck in the past, she said. Don't let it hold you back too. Clara tried to follow the advice, but the pain was all too familiar. It was as if she were being judged all over again, as if all the redemption she'd built could crumble with a simple accusation. In the following days, other messages began to appear. You are a hypocrite. The school forgot too easily. People like you don't change. Clara didn't know who the author was, but the emotional toll was devastating. With each word, she felt the old guilt creeping back in. One afternoon, while collecting project materials from the library, she heard laughter behind the shelves. It was 3 new students, discussing her past. She's the one who made fun of the black girl, right? Yes, and now play the saint. The words cut like blades. Clara took a deep breath, trying to remain calm, but her hands were shaking. She left the room and went straight to the bathroom. She washed her face, stared in the mirror, and wondered if she would ever be able to completely escape the mistake she'd made. Later, he talked to the director. You can't control what others say, Clara, she said firmly, but you can control what you do with it. But it's as if nothing I've done was ever enough, Clara replied, as if I were doomed to be remembered for my worst moment. The director leaned forward and looked her in the eyes. Do you know what differentiates those who change from those who pretend to change? Those who change continue, even when no one believes them. The words stuck. The next day, Clara decided to tackle the problem her own way. During the empathy group meeting, she stood up and spoke in front of everyone. There's something I need to say, he began. I know a lot of people still remember what I did in the past, and rightly so. I don't want them to forget, because forgetting would erase the lesson I learned. I just want them to see that I keep trying to be better, every day. The silence in the room was absolute. Then one of the students, one of the newbies who had mocked her, raised his hand. I saw what you did, Clara. I was unfair. I'm sorry. Aisha smiled softly, and the others began to, applaud. The sound of applause echoed through the room, and Clara felt her heart lighten. Later, alone in the courtyard, she watched the snow fall on the colorful mural. The white flakes mingled with the vibrant paints, as if time itself were erasing the old pains and revealing the beauty of what remained. At that moment, he understood that forgiveness was not something you achieved once. It was something you renewed with each choice. Karma had not come back to punish her, but to remind her. That evolution is not a destination, but a never-ending road. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and when she opened them, she realized how much she had grown. From a cruel laugh, a just woman was born. From a mistake, purpose was born. The ultimate test had not been surviving the hatred of others, but learning not to hate herself. Time passed, and the snow covering the courtyards of Riverdale High gave way to the first flowers of spring. It was the last day of school before vacation, and the school seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Students took photos, wrote dedications in their yearbooks, and said goodbye in the hallways. Clara watched it all with a calm smile, the serene smile of someone who has learned to find beauty even in goodbyes. In the mural, the colors were more vivid than ever. Each line told a part of her story. Looking at it, Clara remembered the arrogant girl she had been and the woman she now was. It was hard to believe it had all started with a cruel joke, a joke that had become a symbol of empathy and resilience. Aisha approached, holding 2 coffees. For us, she said, handing over one of the glasses. Do you still remember the day I offered you some juice? Clara asked, laughing. How can I forget? It was the day I realized you weren't what you seemed. Clara smiled. I think that day I started to realize that too. The two sat on the steps of the courtyard, watching the students running back and forth. Do you know what I learned? Aisha? Asked Clara. What? That changing doesn't erase the past, but transforms the future, and that forgiveness is the kind of strength we only understand when we need it. Aisha nodded, moved. That's why what we've experienced will continue to teach others, even after we're gone. At that moment, the director appeared at the main door. Girls, he called. May I interrupt? They both stood up. I want to thank you. You didn't just change Riverdale. You changed the way students see each other. What you've done here will last. He walked away, and for a moment the two of them were silent. The distant sound of the bell signaled the end of class. Some students threw their notebooks in the air. Others shouted with joy. But amidst the chaos of goodbyes, Clara felt strangely at peace. On her way home, she passed an old toy store she used to frequent as a child. In the reflection of the window, she saw her own face, no longer that of the girl who mocked to be admired, but that of a young woman who now bore scars transformed into wisdom. He took out a new notebook and wrote the first sentence of a diary he intended to start. Life has taught me that laughing at someone else's pain is laughing at one's own ignorance, and that respect is the most beautiful form of love. She closed the notebook with a smile. Outside, the wind blew lightly, and for the first time in a long time, she felt that fate was at peace with her. At night, before falling asleep, she looked out the window and saw the moon reflecting on the streets of New York. She thought about all the times she'd laughed at those who were different, all the tears she'd caused, and how, ironically, that was precisely what made her discover who she truly was. The lesson was complete. Karma had not been a punishment, but a silent teacher, and the laughter that once hurt now healed. True repentance does not seek to erase the past. It transforms it into a bridge to good. Life always gives back what we give, but in the exact form of what we need to learn.